Hello, my friends, and welcome to The Simple Sober Life. I am Joshua, and I help others make simple changes to create a life of awesome. You know, I have had to go through a lot of pain and struggle in order to get to where I am today. I have mentioned many times that, I have attempted to quit drinking on multiple occasions, and for many of those occasions, actually all of those occasions have come up as a failure. And, I brought a lot of pain upon myself and upon others. And I believe it's through that pain that I am now becoming triumphant. And it kind of makes me, wonder about what's going on in the world today. 2020 has been such a year of turmoil, and it's been such a year of pain. We've had bushfires in Australia. We've had earthquakes all over the world. There have been riots all over the world. And then we have a global pandemic. We have, and now we have another case of police brutality turning into riots, and it's really bringing up a lot of racial issues. And I don't remember a time in my life where it seems like the world is going through so much pain. And I was recently talking to a friend of mine. She's a follower on Facebook, and we were talking about, her feeling a lot of anxiety. And one of the things that she cited as causing this anxiety was everything that's going on in the world. And that seems pretty natural to me. It seems pretty normal to me for any human being with a soul and with emotion to actually have some sort of emotional response to everything that's going on. And I was talking to a guy at work today. He's a younger guy. And, it's really easy for me to sit here and, condemn the people who are looting other businesses. I remember when it happened after Trayvon Martin. I remember when it happened in Ferguson. And I'm actually from the Ferguson-Florissant area. I'm very familiar with the area that happened. Fortunately, I wasn't there during that time, but I came home to visit my parents, and, I looked at the devastation that was caused because such a boiling pot had kind of erupted over. And now we're seeing it again across the country. And it's so easy for me to sit here and judge as a white guy in his 30s who brings home a paycheck and who is kind of privileged in his existence. I've never experienced being judged based on the color of my skin. I don't know what that feels like. And I would imagine that, if I were in that situation, then, I would get really sick and tired of, constantly, trying to do the right thing and yet not getting anywhere for it. I was listening to a radio program this morning. It's one that I listen to every day. And they devoted the entire show to the circumstances right now. And they had, several really great guests on. One was a woman of mixed race, and she started talking about how, she kind of understands, but she started her journey in understanding by asking questions and by getting curious about, what it was like for her father, who was a police officer and who was black, about, going up through the ranks of being a police officer as a black man, and some of the brutality that he experienced from the public being a black officer. And, it was kind of insightful to understand her perspective of it as someone who is from both races. And one of the things that she got me is that this isn't a political condition. This isn't a, racial condition. This is a human condition. And I really thought that was an interesting perspective. I like to think of myself as someone who is naturally curious, who wants to understand other people's perspectives while sitting, on top of the world, quote unquote, as a white privileged guy. I don't know, maybe I'm definitely naive. I would be the first one to admit that. I am naive at what actually happens. And, I was brought up in a primarily white community. In high school, I think we had 2 black kids in my class. And even when I moved to LA, I primarily hung out in white areas. And, when I moved to Florida, I was in Naples. That's primarily a prestigious white area. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I was in Alpharetta. And, Alpharetta is, Atlanta is a very mixed community. But let's be honest, Alpharetta is kind of more towards the upper scale of society, and it's more white than it is black. And now I'm living in North Carolina, and in a very, very rural area, and I'm primarily exposed to more of a white atmosphere than a black atmosphere. I do work with several African American colleagues, and they're cool, but I don't really have the experience or the exposure to understand where they're coming from. And and that's my fault. That's my fault. I did not work hard enough to understand the perspectives of someone of a different race. One thing that they were talking about on the radio, which I found really, really fascinating, was children aren't born to hate. They're taught. And that kind of took me off guard because I never really thought about it, but it's absolutely true. When I was, really young, I was growing up in Ferguson, Florissant, and, I went to a school and it was mixed, and I don't really remember thinking, oh, they're black, oh, they're white, oh, they're Asian, oh, they're whatever. We just all played, and it was growing up that, we start seeing that divide. And I don't see myself as a racial person, but I suspect in not working to understand a different perspective, and kind of being naive and closed-minded to, my perspective from being white and growing up in a middle-class society. I just assume that everyone kind of grows up like that, and unfortunately that is not the case. And one thing I was thinking about when I actually just got out of the shower, it's the year 2020, and a big cliche or something that's people always say is hindsight is 2020. And if you think about it, everything that we are going through right now, we have gone through before. There have been massive fires in various parts of the world. There have been global pandemics. 100 years ago, It was influenza. Influenza caused a global pandemic, and now, you know, we just kind of take it every year. Many of us are going to get the flu. And, you know, the stock market here this year, the stock market dropped further than it has in, you know, many years. I think it dropped further than it did in 2008. I think it was 1987 when it has hit this low, these types of lows. And we've been there before. These racial tensions, these racial riots have been occurring for years. You know, since the 1950s, the 1960s, during the civil rights movement. And, you know, there has always been racial tension. And, you know, when white officers get a sense of power and authority and feel like they can objectify and, you know, take advantage of someone else, it's a sad situation. And so the victimized ones, the ones who feel victimized, feel that the only way that they can react is through violence. And we've also seen in the past where that is not the case. And it's not generally the violent protesters who create a legacy. It's usually the ones who admit peace, who change things through peace and through hard work, that become legends. And I think you all know who I'm talking about with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, his protests were always peaceful, and it was his charisma, it was his, what's the word I'm looking for? Persistence that got change done. I absolutely do not agree with what the officers have done, but I certainly don't agree with the response that's being taken. And I get it. I can't say that I completely understand where you're coming from because I've never been there, but I understand being so fed up and so frustrated that you just feel like you want to pop, and that you just feel like your head is about ready to explode. I get that. I get that. And so we're all going through a lot of pain right now. The world, the country is going through a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety. And I sincerely hope that with this, we're able to climb out of the trenches of hell and get to a more triumphant state where we all can live as equals. I know this wasn't my normal type of video. It was just something that was kind of weighing on my conscience. And I don't even know if I've really verbalized how I'm feeling, but I just had to get it out there. I'm more than interested to hearing your perspective on it. Drop a comment down below. If you've got a different take on it, I would love to hear about it, because that is where I believe the change will happen, is when we start expressing our voice and listening to others, asking questions, getting curious. That's where the real change is coming from. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to share it. Again, drop a comment, give it a big old thumbs up so maybe we can get it into the hands of others if you so feel to do so. And subscribe. Hit that bell when you subscribe so you get notified each time I create a video. And until next time, my friends, cheers.